In verses 8 and 9 of today's passage, it says, "After many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. 9 You and all your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land." The prophet Ezekiel prophesied that, after many days, that is, approximately 2,600 years later, Russia would become a military power and lead an alliance of nations against Israel. When Russia takes the lead in forming an alliance between Gog and Magog to attack Israel, the war between Gog and Magog will begin. However, whether this war of Gog and Magog will be the gateway to the 7-year Great Tribulation, or the Great Judgment, or whether it will be in the middle of it, remains to be seen. Additionally, the war mentioned in Zechariah chapter 14 is part of the Battle of Armageddon that will occur at the time of the Lord's return. Some interpret the war where Gog and Magog invade Jerusalem as part of the Euphrates War. That will occur shortly after the latter 3.5 years. In Zechariah chapter 14:1, it says, "A day of the Lord is coming, Jerusalem, when your possessions will be plundered and divided up within your very walls." Here, a day of the Lord refers to the day of the second coming of Jesus. On this day, the foreign nations invading Jerusalem represent the beast and the 10 horns following the beast, that is, the 10 nations. Before these armies are annihilated by the Lord and the heavenly armies at Armageddon, they will trample Jerusalem, bringing unimaginable calamity upon the Jews. However, they will soon be utterly destroyed by the Lord at Armageddon. And all the armies of the world powers that invaded Jerusalem will lie dead on the vast plain of Armageddon, becoming a feast for the birds of the sky. In today's passage Ezekiel chapter 38, it is stated that Magog, located in the farthest northern region, will lead a vast army and attack Israel like clouds covering the land. The country at the northernmost tip of Israel refers to the region of modern-day Russia. This prophecy foretells that the king of the north, who will be established there in the end times, will invade Israel. The outbreak of the Gog and Magog War is a war that occurs during the 7-year tribulation period and can be seen as connected to the Euphrates War, which takes place in the early part of the latter 3.5 years. The Euphrates War appears to be a global nuclear war, caused by the collision of the 4 winds, and it would not be an exaggeration to call this war the Third World War, as it will result in the death of 1/3 of the world's population. If 1/3 of the world's population is killed, a nuclear war is almost certain, and this period is likely to be the time when the beast has already entered and established itself in Jerusalem, marking the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. Daniel describes this as follows: Daniel 11:40, "At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle, and the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and cavalry and a great fleet of ships. He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a flood." This refers to the final battle at the end of the age, when the Arab world of the Middle East, represented by the king of the south, will oppose the king of the north, who is the Antichrist. At this time, the king of the north, the Antichrist, will already be in a position of global dominance, receiving divine worship from all humanity. He will be welcomed by the Jews as a messianic figure, due to the fulfillment of the 1-week covenant, a peace treaty. Therefore, the Antichrist has already entered Jerusalem. At this time, the Antichrist, who appears as the king of the north, will provoke Russia, which is in the extreme north, that is, Gog and Magog. And Gog and Magog will lead a large army from the extreme north to attack Jerusalem, like a whirlwind, and like clouds covering the land. This event will occur at the exact year, month, day, and hour when God commands the angel, release the 4 angels, who were bound at the great river Euphrates. This is described in Revelation 9:13-15, "The 6th angel sounded his trumpet. And I heard a voice coming from the 4 horns of the golden altar that is before God. It said to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, Release the 4 angels, who were bound at the great river Euphrates, and the 4 angels who had been kept ready for this very hour. And day and month and year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind." The Euphrates War and the Gog and Magog War are both seen as wars that occur during the 7-year tribulation period following the 1-week covenant. The Gog and Magog War is believed to be connected to the Euphrates War, either at the beginning or middle of the tribulation period, or shortly after the latter 3.5 years. The Euphrates War and the Gog and Magog War, Ezekiel chapter 38, are seen as wars that will occur during the 7-year tribulation period. And the Battle of Armageddon is the war that will take place at the end of the 7-year tribulation, at the time of the Lord's second coming. There are 2 types of the Gog and Magog War mentioned in the Bible. Specifically, Ezekiel chapter 38 and Revelation chapter 20 each describe the Gog and Magog War. The Gog and Magog War in Ezekiel chapter 38 is a war that will occur after many days, in the latter years when the physical Israelites have returned to their homeland and are living in peace without walls, and Gog and Magog from the extreme north, Russia, will attack with an Arab coalition army. However, the Gog and Magog War in Revelation 20 occurs near the end of the millennium, after the world has ended. And the millennium kingdom has come to an end. At this time, as stated in Revelation 28, and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and to gather them for battle. In number they are like the sand on the seashore. In other words, it is a war in which the deceived people from all the nations of the earth attack and fight against the holy camp of the saints. Though the names are the same, this is a war that differs in time, place, and content. The War of Gog and Magog, we are examining today, refers to the war that occurs at the end of this world, not during the millennium. First, Ezekiel prophesied that in the last days, a nation would rise up against Israel. The instigator of the war is said to arise from Gog and Magog, which are currently the lands of Russia, to oppose Israel. In the text verses 2-7, it says, Son of man, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog. The chief prince of Meshech and Tubal prophesy against him 3, and say, This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Rosh, Meshech and Tubal. 4 I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. 5 Persia, Cush and Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. 6 Also Gomer, with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah from the far north with all its troops, the many nations with you. 7 Get ready, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. The Gog and Magog, mentioned here in the extreme north, refer to the land of Russia today. In verse 3, it says, Gog, chief prince of Rosh, Meshech and Tubal. Where Rosh means Russia, Meshech means Moscow, and Tubal refers to Tobolsk in Russia. And here, Gog leads 5 nations to wage war against Israel. Verses 5 and 6 say, Persia, Cush and 6 Also Gomer with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah from the far north with all its troops. Persia refers to Iran, Cush refers to Ethiopia. Egypt, Beth, refers to Libya, and Gomer refer to Turkey. At the end of the age, Russia will unite with the 5 Islamic armies of Arabia, as stated in verse 8. After many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. Here, the land of Israel is referred to as a place which had long been desolate. The land of Israel was destroyed by Rome in 70 AD, and the Jews were expelled. It remained abandoned and desolate for 1,878 years until it was restored as a nation in 1948. However, in 1948, Israel miraculously regained its nation with the help of Britain and the League of Nations, and Jews from all over the world returned to live together in peace. This is exactly what is being said about Israel today. Just before the second coming of Jesus Christ, these allied forces will invade Israel and force them to withdraw from the land. They will seek to establish Palestine as the capital of East Jerusalem. However, on 70th anniversary of the establishment of Israel in May 2018, President Trump moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This trend has increased the likelihood that Israel and Palestine will soon sign a peace treaty and build the third temple on the Temple Mount. Currently, the Islamic Dome of the Rock stands on the Temple Mount, raising doubts about whether this is possible. However, it is possible to build the third temple alongside the existing Islamic Golden Dome Mosque without demolishing it. This is because recent archaeological discoveries have revealed that the site of the former Holy of Holies is approximately 100 meters away from where the Golden Dome Mosque currently stands. Recently, the Sanhedrin Council of Israel, which is preparing for the Third Temple, asked President Trump of the United States to become the Cyrus the Great of this era and allow the Third Temple to be built in Jerusalem. Second, you mentioned that the motive for Russia, Gog and Magog, to wage war is economic. The Islamic world of the Arabs aims to permanently control the Golden Dome Mosque in the holy city of Jerusalem, but Russia's motive is economic. The interests of both sides align, leading them to unite and attack Israel. Russia's exports of natural gas and oil to Europe have been completely blocked due to the war in Ukraine. As a result, Russia's economy has been severely weakened compared to the past. However, a new natural gas exporter capable of replacing Russia in Europe has emerged, and that is Israel. Israel was once an energy-poor country. However, it has now become a nation sitting on a natural gas bonanza. On the 30th October 2010, the Wall Street Journal reported that the American company Noble Energy had discovered massive natural gas reserves in the Leviathan field off the coast of Israel. These reserves are said to be enough for Israel to use for 100 years and are the largest natural gas reserves discovered in the world in the past decade. Additionally, the U.S. Geological Survey has stated that Israel's natural gas reserves are equivalent to half of the United States reserves, and that it also has 1.7 billion barrels of oil. On the 31st of December 2019, the Israeli Minister of Energy announced that gas production had begun at the Leviathan offshore natural gas field. enabling natural gas exports to neighboring Egypt, Jordan, and even Europe. The European Union reportedly signed an agreement on the 15th of June 2022 to secure additional natural gas supplies from Israel. This move is said to have alleviated Europe's reliance on Russian natural gas, which accounts for 40% of its total supply, by establishing Israel as an alternative supplier, thereby easing concerns over Russia's energy threats. This development effectively neutralizes one of Russia's key leverage points, as Israel has undermined Russia's ability to use energy as a weapon to pressure Europe. For Russia, which boasts the world's largest natural gas reserves, the emergence of Israel as a competitor marks a significant economic and political blow. This explains why Russia started the war. Russia is attacking Israel to take away its treasure, and this is why the war of Gog and Magog has begun. Therefore, in verses 10 to 13 of the text, it says, "This is what the sovereign Lord says on that day. Thoughts will come into your mind and you will devise an evil scheme. You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages, I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. I will plunder and loot and turn my hand against the resettled ruins. And the people gathered from the nations, rich in livestock and goods, living at the center of the land. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish and all her villages will say to you, have you come to plunder? Have you gathered your hoards to loot, to carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods and to seize much plunder? Furthermore, Russia already has a naval base on the island of Cyprus near Israel. Additionally, in northern Syria, Russia has an airbase and a naval base at the ports of Niklik and Tartus. In the event of war, Russia could attack Israel very swiftly. As described in the Bible, Russia, the core power behind the Gog and Magog war, may conspire with anti-Israel Arab forces to launch a war with the evil intent of plundering Israel's precious maritime natural gas and crude oil, which are its greatest assets. In verse 10, it says, on that day thoughts will come into your mind and you will devise an evil scheme. This means that Russia, for economic reasons, will devise an evil scheme and, using the anti-Israel sentiment in the Islamic world as a pretext, will decide to attack Israel. Israel, based on the words of Ezekiel chapter 38, anticipates that Russia will eventually attack and is preparing accordingly. Time magazine also stated that the final war will be initiated by Russia in the Arctic. Additionally, there is a magazine called Biblical Research published in Israel. It featured a special article titled, When Will Russia Invade Israel? Therefore, Israel is aware that the day will come when Islamic nations and Russia will become the main protagonists of war and launch an invasion. Recently, Iran and Russia have been expanding their alliance. However, according to an investigation by Russian intelligence agencies, Israel possesses between 100 and 200 nuclear weapons. Furthermore, Israel is said to have deployed over 200 of these nuclear weapons toward Russian territory. This information is documented in Russian government documents. Furthermore, Russia is said to believe literally in Ezekiel chapter 38. Recently, there have also been reports that Israel possesses over 400 nuclear weapons. The problem is that today, Russia is a country that will collapse if it does not wage war and remains idle. After the Ukraine war, Russia lost 1/3 of its market for selling gas to Europe. Since Israel has replaced the lost European market, Russia now has a reason to keep Israel in check. Therefore, the anti-Israel sentiment in the Arab Islamic world provides Russia with a very good motive for war. Third, the war between Gog and Magog will take place around the time of the final 7 years of tribulation, during which the Antichrist will be active. Muslims are also waiting for their Messiah, the Mahdi. When the first seal was broken, a rider on a white horse appeared. Revelation 6:2 states, I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Muslims initially accepted the entire content of the Bible, but over time, they began to claim that the Bible contains errors and now only partially accept it. Among them, they interpret the rider on the white horse mentioned in Revelation 6:2 as the future Islamic Messiah, the Mahdi. However, we believe that the one riding the white horse is the Antichrist. In Islam, the Mahdi is described as the world ruler. Therefore, Islam's Messiah is said to become the world ruler at the end of the age. In Daniel 7:23, it speaks of the world ruler who will appear at the end of the age. He gave me this explanation, the fourth beast is a fourth kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The world ruler who appears at the end of the world is said to, and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. He is also said to oppose God and persecute the saints. Daniel 7:25 states, he will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times and half a time. Here, the final ruler of the world, the Antichrist, says, he will change the times and the law, and he will make a covenant with many for one time. And he will break the covenant with the saints of the Most High. The Antichrist will persecute the saints severely for 3.5 years. However, in the Hadith, the collection of the sayings and deeds of Muhammad, there is this passage, the Mahdi will establish justice in the world and eliminate evil and corruption. He will fight against the enemies of Muslims and emerge victorious. This describes the Islamic Messiah, the Mahdi, as a world conqueror. Therefore, we can see that the Antichrist is likely to be the Islamic Mahdi. The Mahdi is described as one who conquers and subjugates people through war. Additionally, the Mahdi is associated with the black flag, which is the flag of jihad, or holy war. The Mahdi is also described as the one who will conquer Jerusalem. Therefore, Zechariah 1:4-1-2 speaks of the conquest of Jerusalem. A day of the Lord is coming, Jerusalem, when your possessions will be plundered and divided up within your very walls. I will gather all the nations to Jerusalem to fight against it. The city will be captured, the houses ransacked, and the women raped. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be taken from the city. This event is estimated to occur at some point during the first half of the 7-year tribulation period, when the first 3.5 years have passed. Revelation chapter 11:2 states, "But exclude the outer court, do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample on the holy city for 42 months. Therefore, the Gentiles will conquer the temple, overpower the temple of Jerusalem, and trample it for 42 months, that is, 3.5 years. Ultimately, during the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, Jerusalem will be conquered, and the Jews will suffer immense casualties. According to Islamic tradition, they will raise their flag on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Thus, the Messiah they speak of, the Mahdi, is described as the one who will conquer the Temple of Jerusalem. In other words, the Antichrist will become the ruler of the world government from the Temple of Jerusalem. However, as stated in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2:8, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will overthrow with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the splendor of his coming. Ultimately, the Antichrist will be removed by the coming of Jesus. In Revelation chapter 13 and 17, we must pay close attention to the Antichrist, who appears as a beast rising from the sea. This is because the Third World War, the Battle of Gog and Magog, and the Battle of Armageddon will occur after the Antichrist appears. This Antichrist is described in Revelation chapter 13:1 as follows: "The dragon stood on the shore of the sea. And I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name." This beast, the Antichrist, emerges from a great nation bordering the sea, has 10 horns and 7 heads. The horns symbolize power, and the number 10 represents the nations of the world, which are complete in number. Therefore, during the time of tribulation, all the nations of the world will give their power to him. The 7 heads represent the empires that have ruled the world up to now. And it is prophesied that one of them will seem to die but then rise again to form the 8th empire. Additionally, the Antichrist is said to have taken the 7th head and to emerge from the empire where the 8th head ascends. Thus, we can identify the 7 empires that have appeared on earth up to now. These are, in order, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medes and Persia, Greece, and Rome, 6 empires in total. This was the time when the Apostle John wrote the book of Revelation while in the Roman Empire. However, the empire that emerged after the fall of the Roman Empire was the 7th Empire, the Islamic Empire, known as the Ottoman Empire. This period spans from 1299 to 1922. However, the nation that will form the 8th and final empire of the world is described in Revelation chapter 17:11 as follows: "The beast, who once was, and now is not, is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. The last empire of the world is the empire that was among the 7 and then reappears. Therefore, that nation is the descendants of the Ottoman Turks. The Ottoman Turkish Empire, which once ruled the entire world, was defeated in World War I and collapsed in 1922, dividing into several nations. After World War II in 1945, Israel gained independence. Thus, today, the divided Islamic nations and the independent nation of Israel are competing for hegemony in the Middle East. To restore the glory of the Ottoman Turks, who once ruled the world, the Islamic world of the Arab region will unite to oppose Israel. In other words, the Islamic nations, as descendants of the Ottoman Turks, will unite to form the nation of the Antichrist. And its leader will be the Antichrist. Therefore, it is believed that the future appearance of the Antichrist will be the Islamic Messiah Mahdi. The future Antichrist will rule the world through the economy and kill those who do not follow him or worship him. Namely the Jews and Christians, as revealed in the book of Revelation. Revelation 1:3-1:5-1:7. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. The method of killing those who do not worship the image of the beast is mainly beheading, as stated in Revelation chapter 24. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony about Jesus and because of the word of God. They had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received its mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. It was said that false prophets would promote such a world. In this regard, it implies that the Antichrist is likely to be associated with the Islamic Messiah Mahdi. We are now in the time just before the Third World War and the appearance of the Antichrist. Soon, this present age will pass away, and an age will come when believing in Jesus will be illegal. May you make the most of this last opportunity to preach the gospel without persecution and enjoy the blessing of preaching the gospel in the name of the Lord.